I was outside at the patio grill, soaking in the evening sun, my wife Mia handling a basket of laundry when it happened. Behind me, I heard the dryer click and whirl and then die. At the same time, the lights flicked off. I heard Mia kick the machine and jostle it a bit before cussing towards the door. She was waving for me to come in and check the generator, so I turned the grill on low and used my phone as a flashlight to find the evidence in the bathroom. I told her I'd report an outage to the company and logged into the account as I pushed a window open in lieu to get fresh air. And that was when I saw the real issue. Our bill hadn't been paid. I saw Mia standing there in the doorway waiting for an explanation, and I held a finger up as I called my bank to figure out why the payment didn't go through like usual. 15 minutes later, after staying on hold with an automated message and arguing with a rep about what my online banking had said my balance was less than a day ago, I soon found out that nothing I did was going to get our power back on quickly. Payments I had made yesterday had gone through first, resulting in an overdraft fee, and therefore my routine bill pay couldn't be covered. When I told Mia, she blew her top and yelled in my face. "When are you ever going to get our finances straight?" she asked me, as she threatened to call her mom so she could have a cool place to stay for the night. I was too tired and frustrated to argue, so I went out for a walk. My steps eventually led me to the neighborhood bar. A friend of mine named Tony greeted me at the door. A few drinks later, I told him my problems at home. Day in, day out, feels like I can't catch a break, I told him. Tony seemed deep in thought and grabbed the napkin, scrawling a few words on it with a black ink pen. He flipped it over and showed it was a web domain. All eyes. "I want to check this place out," he said. He explained it was actually what helped him and his girlfriend Caprice stay afloat during their birth of their newborn Nikki. "What is it, some kind of online job service, one that pays quick?" I asked. Tony told me the website service was designed by a security professional, and it was a contract between real people that wanted aid and the monitoring company. "All I have to do," he said, "is agree to be watched." I found myself lingering on his words, thinking about the life he now had. He and his family were happy, stable, no longer living from paycheck to paycheck. "When you say that we're watched, what exactly do you mean?" According to him, the agreement would be that I would be allowed private cameras into my home, and those would stay online at all times. An anonymous audience would watch me live my life, and as long as I complied with occasional requests from audience members, I would get a monthly stipend. There were other caveats, of course, like making sure the cameras were consistently powered on, keeping a regular day job, agreeing to penalties if I refused a request. The way Tony talked, all of it sounded rather normal. Honestly, after a few months, you forget they're even there, he promised me. A few more drinks and, well, he convinced me. Now it was only just a matter of making Mia see it that way. She had plenty of questions, and I did my best to answer them. The stipend we got was a hefty sum, enough that we could stop having to worry about deferred bills and tow trucks hunting for our car in the middle of the night. If things don't work out, I just cancel, I promised her. I wanted to make it work, and eventually my infectious excitement rubbed off on her. She agreed. It was a surprisingly short application, only 9 questions to be precise. The last one was a bit strange, I'll admit, but I didn't reflect on it long. It wasn't even really a question at all, just a reminder. "The audience is always right," it read. I wasn't sure what that meant, but after filling it out, I was able to see that I got approved in only 30 minutes. A few days later, a large silver truck that reminded me of a U-Haul pulled up outside of our house. All eyes had arrived to install the cameras. I casually asked if I could watch as they handled the process, but the technician told me it was better if I didn't actually know where the cameras were at. He said they had an issue where people had taken the cameras out or was selling them on the dark web. I took Mia to lunch, first deposit already in the bank. We sat at a small downtown cafe and watched as families played in the park. A new discussion began about starting our own. I was admittedly floored that she wanted to talk about it at all. I thought you said you didn't want to have kids. That was before, she said. But now, maybe things had changed since we can be stable. It was exciting to hear, but then our first snag occurred when I realized that if we wanted to start trying to make a baby, our privacy would be invaded due to the cameras. She fell silent after that and sipped her coffee. About 5 minutes later, I got an email from All Eyes telling me that the system was fully operational, and we drove back home in silence to our home, where the truck was already long gone. Inside the house, I couldn't help but look around for any sign of the cameras. But after about 10 minutes of checking small corners and crannies, I concluded that they must be smaller than the naked eye. Mia was standing in the middle of the living room, rubbing her hands against her side uncontrollably, and I went to her. "Something wrong?" "You said you wanted this," I told her. She confided in me that she hadn't really thought it through, especially when it came to the routines of hygiene or intimacy. I didn't want to think about it either, especially since I could really use a shower at that very moment. "I'll ask Tony about it. I'm sure there's a workaround. I mean, surely these people don't want to see us taking a shit," I joked, and then laughed softly as I realized our every words were also being broadcast. She nodded and told me that she would go get working on some chores while I texted my friend. I asked if we could meet at the corner pub like we had before, and Tony was more than happy to join me for a few drinks. Now, when we met, he explained that he had been getting a little stir-crazy at home. "It's because of the cameras? I admit it's been bothering me too. That's actually why I wanted to talk," I told him. Tony laughed when I told him my concerns. He said he felt the same at the beginning, constantly feeling like the people behind the monitors were assessing his every move, but then he felt upgraded when he could start receiving audience requests, he said. And he realized more people were interested in other stuff than just our chores. Okay, so you've mentioned requests before. What exactly is that? I asked. I'd recalled seeing them in the brochure, but I wasn't sure what it meant. Tony explained with a free upgrade offer from the company, I could interact with the people that were watching me by taking requests. I didn't have to do it, unless I clicked and agreed on it. And once you agree, you follow through with what the request is and you get paid. You'll see how much the person is offering to pay beforehand, he said. "So, what sort of stuff are you doing?" I asked. Tony pretended to act like it was nothing serious. He told me that very day he'd gotten a request to juggle 3 potatoes. It sounded silly, but then his face darkened as he admitted he'd been asked to do a few unsavory things. There's some perverts on the app for sure. They got their kinks. And even with the monthly payment, it's still tough, he admitted. I told him he didn't have to go into detail. After we finished our drinks, I decided to go ahead and finish the upgraded request. If I could easily reject any request from a customer, I thought, what was the harm in just looking? That night, as we got into bed, my phone pinged with my first request from a watcher. Mia was half asleep, and I rolled over to see the notification. "Give your wife a kiss on the cheek. $5. Do you accept?" The message was clear and precise and sounded so easy that I clicked yes in a heartbeat. Then I leaned over and kissed my wife goodnight. 5 minutes later, there was a deposit in my account for the amount just like they said. I smiled and closed the app, drifting off to sleep. The next day, after I brushed my teeth and dressed for work, I saw that I had several new requests from the app. I was surprised to also discover that we had 30 people currently watching our feed. Mia also finished a shower, and one of the requests said they wanted a picture of the steamy bathroom mirror. That sounded so simple enough, so I did it. But when I did, Mia asked what I was doing. Well, it's just a bit strange, but it'll help us, I said. I showed her the app and the requests. She was initially weirded out by the idea of doing what anonymous internet users wanted us to within the privacy of our own homes. I assured her that they couldn't make us do anything. We could decline any of these, so it's perfectly harmless what we do, I told her. She checked her phone and said that she was late for work, not wanting to discuss it any further. I was going to be late too, but a request from a viewer specifically asked me to attempt to drive backwards down the road. The offer was $100. We live in a pretty decent neighborhood, not a lot of traffic. It's a cul-de-sac, so I knew the attempt to drive would mean I needed to make a couple of turns, avoiding parked cars on the side of the road. I walked to my garage, looked out towards the street. Now, there were only 3 cars parked at the moment. I decided to accept the request and got into my car, turning the gear to reverse and watching my rear-view camera carefully. I didn't attempt to speed, but I'm not exactly a perfect driver, so it took me a little longer than I anticipated. I got a few curious looks from neighbors as I finished the task, but nothing unexpected happened, except I did hop on a sidewalk briefly. I chuckled in relief as the $100 was deposited into my account. No, I couldn't help but wonder what the next interesting request would be. By the time I got home, I actually had 5. Most of them were small, but one was marked with a black box and no text. I clicked on it and was immediately met with an explanation about why it was so different. The request has come from a user that pays extra towards your account when you finish the task. However, the difference is that you can't know what the task is beforehand. That sounded risky, so I ignored it until I saw the user was willing to pay $200 for the task. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened the task, a bit surprised to see that it was so simple. Make yourself a sandwich and watch sports for 2 hours. For $200? Easy as pie. When Mia got home, the game was still on, and she asked me to help with dinner. I was about to get up from the couch when I got a warning notification. Failure to fulfill the task will result in no payment. They wanted me to stay there watching TV for another 30 minutes. Sorry, babe, I gotta stay and finish the game, I called out to her. My wife stood in front of the TV demanding an explanation, and I showed her the request I was handling. It's really not a big deal, I told her. Mia did her best not to roll her eyes, but let me keep watching. She told me that I owed her big time. I chuckled, and I finished watching the game. The deposit came soon after. I went to the dinner table and sat down, telling her I would buy her something nice. When I got another ping. Mia huffed in frustration. Turn that thing off while we eat, she insisted. I think I can't, I admitted, as I gestured around towards the unseen cameras. She announced she was going to eat outside. I put the phone down reluctantly and followed her. Something's wrong. You're acting different, I told her, as I sat alongside her on the back steps. What she said next took me by surprise. She claimed I was the one that was changing, and it was all because of the cameras. Right now, they're asking you to do things that are harmless, but what happens if that changes? She said. She was worried. She was worried that I was becoming obsessed with what the Watchers thought of me. I didn't dare mention my stunt with the car that morning. I promised her that I was being responsible with the requests. This money is changing our lives, for the better. We should lighten up a little. These requests just add a little spice to our life, I said. To prove my point, I showed her that one requested we attempt to play a musical instrument with one hand tied behind our back. It looked very silly, and Mia sighed, but she agreed to it. But that agreement didn't last much longer as the days passed. Our audience was always watching, always requesting me or her to do something a bit out of the ordinary, and she was becoming irritated with it. I also was getting more black box requests, and they were becoming more bizarre. One that I immediately declined, which caused a penalty, was when a user requested that I leave the toilet unflushed for a full day. The penalty, though, prevented me from using my funds the rest of that day. Pretty steep risk if you needed to handle a financial crisis again, I realized reluctantly. Mia became more and more distant from me, frustrated that I was fulfilling these requests, but then when I showed her the results by buying her flowers or some expensive gifts, she relented and she'd let me do another. It was actually becoming addictive, and I so wasn't going to admit that. I wanted to do things to increase our viewer rating, because I noticed when I didn't, it would begin to fluctuate. Users would get bored if we simply did nothing. I logged on one time late at night to see 2 separate black box requests waiting for me. It was 3:30 in the morning and I had to get up to pee, and One amount was worth $500. For that amount, I'd be willing to do just about anything. Right? Opening the tab, I saw the user was requesting that I send him pictures of Mia asleep in bed. I considered rejecting it, but I knew that the penalty could be far worse this time, so instead I stepped out quickly to the room and raised up my camera. I took one without the flash and sent it immediately. Instead of getting paid like I hoped, I got a notification. Too dark, need better quality. Reluctantly, I took one with the flash, my wife mumbling in her sleep. This time I got paid along with a small text box that said, "Thank you" from the user. Sighing, I slipped into bed and checked the other black box. Cut off a strand of your wife's hair. $35. I had already clicked, so I knew I had to do it or face a penalty. This one also came with a timer. I had 12 minutes, or I'd be dealing with the consequences anyway. Quickly, I went to the kitchen, found a good pair of scissors, then I slowly climbed into bed and turned towards her. Mia looked so peaceful, unaware of the strange action I was about to perform. I was about to cut it when my phone abruptly rang. Mia's eyes groggily opened, and I hid the scissors as I answered the phone. It was from the police. There's been a fire at Tony's. We're on his list of emergency contacts, I told her. We hurriedly got dressed and drove across town to see the house was almost entirely a smoldering crater. As we arrived and identified ourselves, EMS told us that Tony didn't make it out alive, and his wife was in a coma in the hospital. According to them, this meant their little girl Nikki was temporarily in our custody since they didn't have any family on their contacts. Mia held Nikki as the little girl cried in confusion. And I looked at the fire, worried about my friend's wife. "What caused the fire?" I asked one of the personnel on the scene. They looked at me and said that they were still investigating the scene, but it looked like someone had deliberately started a small fire in the garage. That was where Tony's body had been found, inside his car. His death was from asphyxiation, though, they told me. A sudden dark thought came to Mia's mind, and she asked if Tony had his phone with him at the time of death. The response told me that was correct, and it made me wonder how my wife thought of that connection. "It's obvious," she said as we drove home. "He was fulfilling one of those dumb requests. But we have no way of knowing that," I argued, as I felt a twist in my stomach. What if she was right? Had Tony taken things too far? As I got home and we settled Nikki into our guest room, Mia agreed to rest alongside her and I collapsed into our king-size bed. A notification pinged me just before I fell asleep. A new request from a watcher. Send pictures of the girl. $50. I confess my eyes lingered on it for longer than I expected. I felt hesitation. It was just pictures, I told myself. That was harmless, right? I declined it, forced to face a penalty the next day. I felt a sick twist in my gut as I lay down, staring at the ceiling. In the morning, Mia prepared us breakfast, and we tried to make Nikki comfortable. She wanted to watch cartoons, but the watchers had other plans. They began requesting I put on sports clips and weather reports, and I complied, holding the child in my arms to keep her at ease. When it came time for Nikki to have a diaper change, I could tell Mia was uneasy about handling that task here in the house. "What happens," she asked, "if we turn the cameras off?" I told her that I wasn't sure that was even an option. It was never discussed in the contract. She insisted that I needed to find out. I said that I would, but I didn't. I was too obsessed with the feed, the requests. I needed to see what the audience wanted next. Mia told me I needed to delete the app entirely. "We don't need the extra," she claimed. "We're doing just fine with the monthly amount. Can't you tell it's driving a wedge between us? I said that I would. She took Nikki to the park, and I sat on the couch, my palms sweaty as I considered what I was giving up. The requests and comments were overflowing as I struggled to make a decision. Suddenly, a black box filled the screen with an offer for $3,000. I wish I could have controlled myself, but I admit I never clicked on a request so fast. The task was so simple, but it was also somewhat disturbing. The user was requesting me to slash the tires of my wife's car when she returned. Now, I double-checked to make sure that didn't go against any agreement. Tony had claimed that they couldn't make any tasks to hurt me or my family, but Tony's gone now. For some reasons unknown, what if one of the users found a loophole? What if my friend was dead because he took things too far? I saw the penalty would be an entire week without funds and realized, to my regret, that I would have no choice. Me would have to understand, I told myself as I waited for her to return. But when she found out what I was doing, she was furious. Suddenly, she began to ransack our house, tossing furniture, tearing up paintings. "I want to find these damn cameras," she yelled at me. She insisted I let her log on to request that we cancel the service. When I refused, she tried to grab the phone from me. In my haste, I pushed her back and she tumbled and fell, nearly stepping on where Nikki was resting. "Are you okay?" My wife looked at me with contempt and bitterness. She swatted my hand away as she stood and cradled Nikki close to her. Moments later, she was calling her mother. "What are you doing? Are you leaving?" She told me nothing I said or did would stop her, and I was about to try and make a valid argument when my phone popped up a new task. The watchers wanted me to stop her from making the call, and I felt compelled to agree. I pushed my wife against the wall and forcibly I took the phone from her, demanding that she listen to me. "You can't just walk out when things are hard. This is our life now," I shouted in her face. Another notification caught my eye. In that brief moment of distraction, she slapped me across the face. The notification insisted that I lock her in our bedroom. "This is for your own good. We need the views," I told her as I twisted her arm and pulled her towards the bedroom. Mia bit me. The baby began to cry. "You're a madman, a slave to these people. You've never even met them, and yet you do their every bidding," she told me. But the risk of not complying was too dangerous. I couldn't go back to our old life. "We've come so far," I insisted. She told me that our life together was over, and I snapped at that moment. She was walking out, and I could tell she had no intention of coming back. I tried one last time to grab her wrist, and she punched me in the jaw, cussing me out as she walked down the street. I watched from the porch, calling for her to return, and frustrated that she couldn't see what our future was becoming. The requests were coming in like a floodgate being opened. We had never had so many views. The audience wanted me to try something more dangerous. Break glass on the carpet, $19. Turn off all the lights, $13. Walk backwards, barefoot, to the bedroom, $10. Separately, the tasks were innocent, but combined, I did as I was asked. The cameras watched as I moaned and winced in pain, walking across the shards of glass. Blood droplets littered our floor. I laid in bed, hardly able to move. Outside my window, a thunderstorm was brewing. I thought about Mia walking in the rain. Where would she be headed? Was she even safe? And then I heard a faint buzz and the crackle of thunder. Moments later, the power went out and I sat up. Instinct took over and I checked the app. "All systems down, please wait instructions." A moment later, someone knocked on my door. Carefully, I walked down in the dark to the front porch, my bloody feet staining my perfect floor. Mia was there, holding Nikki tight as they both were soaked to the bone. The baby began to cry as she stepped into the house and saw what I'd done. "Give me your phone," she insisted. "I'm not staying here, but I can't walk any further." She reached for it. I took a step back and she stumbled on something amid the darkness. My wife fell forward into the broken glass. In the chaos, I heard Nikki wail as the shards gashed them both. I froze, looking down at them. She shouted for me to call 911. Thunder crackled again, and I looked at my phone. Instead, staring at the app, No one was watching. I was alone. I stood there in the doorway as my wife bled and her body crushed the infant that was still meant to be in our care. As the power surged back on, her feeble cries were outweighed by my urge to check for a new task. The cameras at last were back online. But no requests came. Viewers were in the thousands. I was given an alert that they were contacting authorities. I stood frozen near to my wife's bloody body until police arrived. They took me aside, letting their forensics team handle the rest. A police officer questioned me about my inaction. My wife and my goddaughter had just died in front of me, and I stood paralyzed. Why hadn't I done anything? My response was mechanical. No one was watching. I want to remind you guys that I also do narrations over at Chilling. The Chilling app is available for Android, iPhone, and if you'd like to get your hands on the Chilling app and hear myself as well as many other narrators, and they have a whole new setup where you can watch movies on there now, and it's also free to try out with ads now, so you don't have to get a subscription like you used to before. You can actually just get the app, you can start watching on your PC. It's evolved so much since the last time I have updated you guys on this, and sincerely, it's a great place if you want to see more horror, especially if you like horror audio. So strongly suggest you check out the Chilling app. And finally, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody who supports me on Patreon. So I want to give a very special thank you to Jordan Humble, Diana Kraus, Disciple, Strategy Wolf Emoji, SullyMan, Brandon Mendoza, BrimstonePandemonium, Caltuna, William Wellington, Scruffy the Janitor, Brenna, LaQueda Canizales, Smiley the Psychotic, Jjenna, Dante Kinkade, SimbasBloodyMojo, Mephistopheles, CursepoxPrimarch, M, Jesus Cornejo, Yarghoul, VerbalHorror, Amber Clark, J. Kearns, Mike, himbojerry, CrusaderChocobo, Corbin Dallas, Estabine, Seclude, Salty Surprise, Red Shadowcat, Turtleman, Cryolinian, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Dirt Diver 030, Voice of Sand, Psychomel, Melted Lake, Tali Sue, William King, Sashi Suzaku, Croconut 509, Stricken, Freddy Krueger, Hades Nephew, Acid System, Sky Harbor, Nico Kyle, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Daniel Polson, and Corey Kenshin. I really appreciate your support, and I cannot thank you enough. I wish you all the best. Sweet dreams.